All right. Chapter 10. Kaladin is flying to the Shattered Plains with the basically the hierarchy of the Fourth Bridge. Navani, Dalinar, some important Windrunners are all with him, and they're flying back to Urithiru. And Kaladin confronts Yunfa, who's a honor spren, and his radiant has died. And Yunfa refuses to bond Rlain, our resident Windrunner bridgeman singer, who betrayed. I'll go with it. The other listeners at the end of Words of Radiance, and finally joins in with Bridge 4 at the end of Words of Radiance. And Yunfa refuses to consider him purely on the fact that he's a singer. What are your guys' thoughts on this, combined with the knowledge of Venli has a Radiant Spren and has spoken the first ideal? So with that knowledge, what are you guys' thoughts on Honor Spren being, dare I say, racist against singers?
I actually thought about this from an interesting perspective. It felt odd for Kaladin to be dictating these relationships. That what we've learned so far about them, thinking about Kaladin and Syl and Shallan and Pattern, it seems like a very personal relationship. That this is someone who's in your head all the time. This is someone who you are going to be forced to share all the intimate details of your life. And so I kind of have the feeling or the understanding in my head that, similar to Kaladin and Syl, this is a very personal thing. This is something where a Spren very carefully picks a human, a being, to bond with. So for Kaladin to tell a Spren, hey, you must go bond this person, that seems like, should Kaladin be doing that? I have no idea what the rights of, a High Marshal of the Windspren or whatever he is might be. But I don't know. That almost seemed kind of out of his responsibility, his right.
Yeah, I could agree. It doesn't seem something you can create artificially, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have much to add there.
Yeah, this is one of those things I was like, well, I hope it works out. There's not much more I can do than that, I think. So,
but besides maybe that, I'll add that it's been a year now, and Kaladin and Rlain was one of the first, like, prominent members of Bridge 4, and if he's the only one not getting a wind spren at this point, Kaladin wants to step in and do something, and so takes this opportunity to try to push that. So that's
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's maybe the only thing I'll add, is that the time aspect here of trying to force it, because clearly he's not going to be chosen if Kaladin has to do something.
Right. And I definitely don't see any reason why Rlain should not get a Spren. It definitely seems like he absolutely should.
Right.
It just seems like it's not something you can dictate, not something you can say, hey, Spren, you must go bond this person. It seems like it's much more of an organic relationship that has to be built on, things like trust. Whereas if you force a Spren to do that, is that relationship going to have that?
Right.
Do you think whenever Venli, travels to town and joins our crew, do you think Rlain will be her Will Shaper squire?
Could be. Yeah.
Sure.
That'd be fun. Trevor, I'm really curious because I think you've said that this is like one of your very, very favorite chapters in all of Stormlight.
I did.
And I listened to this chapter, and I knew this was like before I heard it. And so chapter 10, I listened through. I was so excited. I was like, this is one of Trevor's favorite moments. I'm really excited. I'm expecting something like Wander Sail, like really, really cool. And I don't think I get it. I literally thought I was like, I did it. I finished the reading. And I was like, I think he typoed.
Wrong
I
chapter.
literally
I
thought
told
you
you the wrong
typoed the
chapter.
wrong chapter. Yeah. Like, so we see Kaladin get discharged from the military.
We do.
Could you just enlighten me?
I will.
I think I understand like your significance and why you like this. I'm assuming it's based off of like wanting Kaladin to get a break, whatever, do all this stuff.
Right.
But your one of your very, very favorite Stormlight moments is kind of a stretch for me. So I'm really curious to hear what you have to say.
I'll set the scene and then I'll talk about why I like it so much. So Kaladin returns here, talks to Yunfa, moves on, and is just trying to get to his room. It's like, man, I'm so exhausted. Moash is getting to me in my head. I'm going to get to the Oath Gate, jump into my bed, sleep the rest of the day. And Dalinar stops him and confronts him about his relationship between the Windrunners and the Heavenly Ones, which I don't want to gloss over. We can come back to it after I get on my little soapbox here. And then B, Kaladin's mental health. And the stinger line from Dalinar is, I don't know if I can field soldiers that I can't rely on when the pressure mounts, is what he says. And I remember listening to this on my first time, and I'm thinking, man, that stings. That hurts to be in Kaladin's shoes and having all this doubt that Moash should just put in your head. And for Dalinar to say, I don't know if I can rely on you because you are not mentally fit. That hurts to hear. But the reason why I love this scene so much is because it is so well written. The tone that Dalinar pulls Kaladin aside is completely in line with what Dalinar would do in the situation. And I do want to push this over to Eliot for the Dalinar portion, because I think you saw what I see in the scene as well, Eliot. But Dalinar pulls him aside and does what's best for Kaladin, and Kaladin views it as betrayal instantly. He does seem to see the logic that Dalinar has at the end of this when Dalinar says, diagnose yourself, Kaladin. I know you're a surgeon. Tell me what you see. And Kaladin walks himself through it of what happens if I'm there and I freeze and one of my Windrunners dies because he's expecting me to block on his back and I'm not there to do it. And that is what eventually gets through to Kaladin of, I'm putting my men at risk by being in the field. And that is such a devastating reality to come through for Kaladin. And I'm a big fan of the writing in this chapter. But go ahead, Eliot, if you want to chime in here.
Yes, definitely. I don't know that I would. I was a little bit with you, Paul, actually. And when I read through this chapter, I was like, his favorite chapter ever. Interesting. Interesting. I would not have placed it in a category like that. However, everything you've said so far, I completely agree with. Very well written, very emotionally powerful. I had an emotional response.
Me too.
When Dalinar just drops that line, because it kind of comes out of nowhere. You know, he's talking to him about the battle. He's like, Kaladin, you're one of my best soldiers. It's time I relieved you from duty. Like, wait, what? Surely I just read that line wrong. No, let me go read that again. Relieved of duty. Wow. And I immediately thought, like, man, Dalinar knows what he's doing here. He doesn't say it here, but he knows exactly what this is going to do to Kaladin. He knows that this is going to be hard. Remember, Dalinar has been through withdrawal, I guess I'll call it, from battle.
Right.
He, in his flashbacks in Oathbringer, we saw him react really badly to not being able to fight. And maybe that's kind of an extreme version. We know that Dalinar was like battling with the thrill and all this kind of stuff. Maybe some struggles that Kaladin's not necessarily going through. But Dalinar knows exactly what it's like to be a man of battle, where that is your life, that is your livelihood, that is who you are, and being pulled away from that and sat in a castle to make plans and not actually get to fight people. It did not go well for Dalinar. So he knows what he's doing to Kaladin here, but he also knows that it's what Kaladin needs. He can see him headed for a breaking point, and he says, "No, I'm gonna stop you now." And I also thought, as a general, this has to be super counterintuitive for him. He's in the middle of a war to try and save the entire planet. Like, that's the scope of things we're talking about here, is he's trying to save the lives of everyone on the planet. And he's going to take his best soldier in his entire army, and say, "I'm taking you out of battle for your good." He puts Kaladin's health, Kaladin's interest over the entire war effort. That is incredible right there, to be able to do that.
What if Zeth comes in and replaces him because he wouldn't hesitate?
Zeth would not hesitate. That is true. In fact, well, where is Zeth? Hello, where is
that was my follow-up question. I was like,
wait a minute,
because last we saw him, big, Avengers Assemble moment at the end of Oathbringer.
Yep.
It's like, oh, he's with the crew. Then I was like, I don't know. Hopefully I find out soon. I'd like to know.
I do think, I don't know if Trevor, if you have more thoughts you wanted to go into. I do think while this is an incredibly self-sacrificing-ish move from Dalinar to do this for Kaladin, I think this is going to hit Kaladin really hard. Like you mentioned, we are just coming off the back of Moash's cutting words that he just dropped into his head, feeding on his doubt and his depression. And then now Dalinar hits him with this. Oh dear. I don't think this is going to go well.
Yeah. It's poor timing, to say the least. And part of the reason why Dalinar is pulling him is because he's snapping at those who love him, is the quote. And when Tef comes to sit down next to him and he yells at him and says, "I don't want to talk," that's a red flag for anyone that says, "Hey, I need you to take a step back." And Kaladin says, "So I can return if I'm mentally fit." And Dalinar says, "Yeah, well, we can consider that once we get to that point." But Kaladin has very low hopes of himself ever returning to duty, and I do agree that this will hit him really hard, and how he reacts to that.
I'm only annoyed because this is at the same time where he had just had his, Moash moment, and all I can think about is he just needs to be around people who are good and caring,
Right.
And I'm afraid it's going to push him out of his circle.
Yep.
And so now I'm very worried. That's the only thing that's got me scared.
I do think that if Kaladin can get through this, though, it's going to be a very good thing for him. I think more and more he was using war to kind of shore up his identity, who he was. He's building his identity around the relationships he has in the military. That cannot sustain him forever. He can't live his entire life on war.
Right.
He has to be able to transition from that at some point. So to kind of force that transition now into something maybe a little more applicable to peacetime is a good thing if he can make it through it.
Yeah, I agree. The part I said that we come back to here in a second, I'll tie to the next chapter, and as we can tie into this chapter 11 Venli chapter. Dalinar confronts Kaladin about the relationship between the Heavenly Ones and the Windrunners. And we've talked about this a little bit briefly before, of they seem to be sparring almost. There's a whole battle going on around them, and they're choosing their one-on-ones and fighting to first blood almost, or fighting to until you're out of Stormlight and then I won't kill you. So that in chapter 10, all the Windrunners are celebrating that they didn't lose anybody. But they almost lost Sigzil, and the only reason why they didn't is because Leshwi took pity or spared his life. And Dalinar gets a report of this and says, why are they doing that? Why are you not finishing these fused off? And Kaladin rebuts it with, well, they let us do this, so why wouldn't we take advantage of this? We're losing human lives if we die. They're just losing time, and we're just slowing them down, basically, on what they do, because they're reborn with every high storm, or with every Everstorm, rather. So, what were you guys' thoughts on finding honor among the heavenly ones, as Dalinar puts it?
A little surprised, but I'm kind of with Kaladin on this one. Why not pursue that? If there's a way to have a contest of arms, almost in a way, kind of take the place of bloodshed, why not do that?
Why are the heavenly ones doing that?
Yeah, I don't know about that. That's an interesting one. Does not seem in line with specifically the fused. The fused we've seen before seem, some of them are broken, completely mentally gone.
Right.
The others that we've seen seem pretty decisive, unforgiving. They carry some pretty huge grudges. They're here to get revenge for the thousands of years of torture and difficulty they've been through. So to then see these heavenly ones who are all fused, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, seems a little out of character from what we know so far.
I guess there might be a question of if there's regals among the heavenly ones, if they get like squires like the Windrunners do.
Which definitely seems very possible. But if that is the case, and this is going to lead into, I think, what you're going to kind of spell out for us here, regals are not reborn in the Everstorm. So in that situation, it is a life and death scenario. Whereas with the fused, yeah, you can kill a fused, but it's just going to come back. That whole kind of dilemma, and that seems to be how they're approaching the situation, which makes me think that this is all fused we're talking about.
Right. So I'm going to spell this out. We've done this before on the podcast, but I omitted some of these terms last time I did this at the beginning of Oathbringer. So, and everybody was yelling at me at the comment section, like, you didn't include this and you didn't include that. Yep, I know, I didn't. That was intentional. So we have singers, who are, the common term for them is parshmen, or just your common parshmen across Roshar. And as the Everstorm came through, it awakened them, returned to their forms, returned to their rhythms. They can hear the rhythms of Roshar, and they can think freely again. Their minds had been suppressed. How we're not really sure of how that happened, but their mind had been suppressed. The Everstorm comes, and all of the singers have been set free. Now that's different from the listeners. The listeners, back in the prelude to the Stormlight Archive times, had before that even happens, they excise, is that the right word, themselves from the whole ecosystem of the fused and the singers, and they go and start their own colony in what we can maybe assume is the Shattered Plains, is where we find them. They go and make their own colony, and they don't listen, or they don't partake in the fused coming back and overcoming their bodies. They don't bond any void spread. They're going to go live by themselves, and those are the listeners where Venli and Eshonai come from. Okay, so a singer versus a listener. Listeners are way more passive, whereas a singer is partaking in the culture of Roshar. That's the thought there. So the fused come back with the Everstorm. They are the sentient beings that have lived for however long like our heralds. They come back and they take over a singer's body, a listener's body, and they wreak havoc. They're the void bringers, if you will. And then we have regals, who are singers who have bonded void spren, who can, and that allows them to hear new rhythms and have new forms, and it turns their eyes red. So at the end of Words of Radiance, when all of the listeners' eyes turn red, they summon the Everstorm, and then they all bond void spren. They all become regals, not necessarily fused yet. On track?
Yes.
Yes.
Any questions? Okay. Can a regal become a fused? That's a question that Venli is opening this chapter with. Venli, at the end, the last line of Venli's point of view chapter in the end of Oathbringer is, I've just said the first ideal. I'm going to turn to these singers over here and tell them about the listeners. There was a whole people group that didn't partake of any of this and just wanted to live peacefully. So we jump to her here, and she has some followers of her little sect here, and one of them is like, when are we going to attack the fused? I don't want to be here anymore. I want to leave. So she has a small following here that's trying to leave this whole system and go live by themselves again, like the listeners did way back when. That's where we pick up Venli. We learned a couple more things, but what were you guys' thoughts on this first Venli chapter?
As I mentioned in the intro, I'm trying to figure out, what is Venli doing? Here we are, kind of picking up with her. We knew she had become a radiant. Now we're a year later. What has she done with her time as a radiant amongst the singers, amongst the fused, all of these people? I'm a little confused, but it's starting to kind of come together. She seems to be very much an advocate of like free will. She wants the singers to have the choice to do what they want.
Yeah.
She does not want to return to the oppression, slavery to humans. She does not like the new form of what she's viewing as kind of oppression to the fused. She sees them as kind of coming in and taking over and running the show, and they claim to be here to win back the world for the singers, but in doing so, they're taking over the bodies of singers, killing them in order to do this. So Venli's kind of calling them out a little bit on their methods there. So she wants freedom. She wants her people, her race of beings, be able to live their lives the way they want to without someone else coming in to tell them how to do it.
Yeah.
This is what so reading this chapter was where I was really trying to compare that epigraph that I mentioned earlier. And honestly, I don't really see much to take from it and apply here. That doesn't mean it's not true or anything. I think we just haven't quite seen enough yet. But I am very kind of tuned in, interested in Venli and what's going to happen. Because I imagine being in the middle of all these fused and singers and everyone here that like I imagine it will cause some like awkward scenarios of like she can use Stormlight like no one else can, right? Like they
Right.
use Void Light and stuff. Like isn't that gonna raise some eyebrows?
Yeah.
Where she's at, like I don't know. It seems really weird and like covert. Like she has to remain very, very covert while still being kind of like a leader in her like people. And so I don't know where that's gonna get us.
Yeah, it's a great question. Leshwi says, "Yeah, I can see everything you're thinking," and Venli's like, "No, you can't." Like in her head, she's like, "If you could do that,
That's pretty funny.
I'd be dead." So she just certainly has plenty to hide, and if she, could reveal that if she accidentally uses Stormlight in front of someone, like even one of her own followers, they'll be like, excuse me, what was that?
Something is not right here.
So, yes, she has certainly a lot to lose.
On the different powers that she has, she can use Stormlight. She can also use Void Light. She uses one power in this scene where she peeks into Shadesmar. She's looking for spies. She can, see their presence in Shadesmar, even if they're hiding in a closet or something like that.
Right.
Is that a radiant power that she has? Or is that a power that she has access to because she's a regal? I didn't quite catch it. Are we supposed to know at this point?
I think it's gotta be a radiant thing, right?
You are supposed to assume that it's a radiant power. She claims that it's a regal power to her close inner circle. But she thinks it's a radiant power, at least, I think.
So I think we'll have to jot that down, because that might be important to confirming whether she's a will shaper or not. If that's one of her surges, then we might be able to start to we should be able to start to narrow down pretty quickly who she might be, what she might be.
I've been staring at that thing on Trevor's wall, trying to figure out which one it is and what it means, what it's next to. Because isn't that like an else color thing where they can see into Shadesmar? Or I could be wrong.
Well,
I kind of thought it was a Lightweaver thing.
Yeah.
With the soul casting stuff.
It goes Lightweaver, Else Caller, Will Shaper.
Okay.
So.
Nice. Shared with Else Caller and
Stonewards.
Stoneward. Interesting.
That is the half of the circle that we don't really know anything about over there.
Yeah. What's above it? Is that Edge Dancer?
Bondsmith.
Okay. Why is that next to Windrunner? Or is that wrong?
No, it is. Windrunner, Bondsmith, Stoneward.
What? I thought Windrunner was like between Edge Dancer and Skybreaker.
Who?
For the surges? I always thought Windrunner was between Skybreaker and Edge Dancer.
It's between Skybreaker and Bondsmith.
Oh, wow, okay. I guess I was just wrong.
Windrunners get adhesion, so they can pull things together. That's the Bondsmith thing as well.
Okay.
Some of the surges get a little bit confusing because, like, lift can make things have no friction, and then, like, Kaladin can make things stick together.
Right.
So, like, a similar, force they're manipulating, but kind of in opposite ways. But we saw Dalinar use that adhesion power where he, like, sticks stuff to the wall. So we know that he shares that power with Windrunners. We've seen him do that.
Yeah. Anything else for episode 104?
Just the ominous kind of closing of this chapter where we learn that Venli's been contacted by some unknown spren who wants to give the singers another chance. I didn't even remember more than that, really. Just kind of we need to speak more on this. Like, ooh, okay, what's that? But an interesting set of chapters for sure.
All right. We will reconvene next week. Thanks for joining me, Paul and Eliot.
Later.
Peace out.